I will thank you for your questions. I don't know how adequately I will be able to answer these, but I will try and make some suggestions that may prove helpful. The practical questions are always the challenging ones, and they're always the ones that will invite us to grow and change more than anything else. And that's why it's good to have some practical questions, as you have said. Now, let's begin with, because I don't know what kind of training people have had, and therefore, at what point can you begin to help somebody? As we've said here many times, there are many different schools and models of formation. And this is justo, and it's a very good thing that there are different ways of exploring how to help another. But as you know, a model or a school is it's a frame that has a purpose, a name, it has a method, and it has a practice. It has a theoria and a practice. And in vocation, it has a theologia of vocation. So all schools that will help us with growth in vocation, seems to me, has to involve these elements to help us train to be good mentors of the vocational process in this one. Also, I would like to suggest, as has been said, the training in vocational mentoring requires also, I believe, a training in understanding the ways of God. How does God touch people's lives in history? What's the stories of how people find God in their lives? How have they noticed the movement of the Spirit in their lives? I think this needs to be emphasized also, the ways of God among His people. You know that famous psalm, the pain of the psalmist. One time he said, "This is what causes my grief. This is what causes my grief, that the ways of the Most High have changed." And the ways of the Most High, brothers and sisters, are always changing. The ways of the Most High have changed. So it becomes us to begin to get a sensitivity. We never know everything about the ways of God. This is not necessary, please, because we have to live in trust also. But the ways of the Most High will be changing. So we need a sense of that. How does God move among His people? And how does God transform people on a journey of faith towards Him and a journey of service in His name? How does He do that? I think schools can teach us that, and there are schools who are good at it. Another aspect of school or model is, I mentioned this in my presentation, a deep understanding of how does the person grow? How does the human person grow? How does the human person change? In what ways does a human being become blocked in their journey of life? I try to make some effort to say these are important things to keep balance. So a school or a method that introduces us to this, I think would be really more than adequate to help us to do a good enough job. Remember, please be happy with a good enough job. That's all you have to do. Just be good enough. Not perfect, as we said, we heard the other day. We can't be anywhere. We're not perfect human beings. But to be able to do a good enough job in assisting the work of God. Remember, it's God's work. We are assistants, hopefully, in some degree. And as I said earlier, one of the difficulties is that a school or a training needs to introduce us to be able to recognize the signs of the positive living in a vocational life. What's really working? What is working in their lives? Let's notice it, affirm it, support it. What is really working in their lives? And at the same time, have a sense of what is not working. What are the actions, the habits that are not working in a person's life? I think a school or a method has to introduce us to a good enough knowledge of these two processes that are going on in the vocational life. I think that's really would be helpful in it. There's a principle. Some of the things I introduced to you today, these are not imaginative possibilities. They're actions that have come from years of the study of neuroscience of the brain, how the human brain works, and as the brain works, so the rest of us works. So I'm trying to introduce them, I didn't pull them out of the sky as a result of imagination. I've researched this and have trained in it for the last 10 years. But I do recommend this, and it's very simple, actually, to try and do this thing. I would like a school to be able to introduce that today. The difficult question, the role of authority people, or as Sister Lay said from the Philippines, the people of reference in a formation community. Well, there's an old saying in English that says, too many cooks spoil the broth. And maybe it's also true in this case. Too many cooks spoil the broth. And maybe a formation community needs to have a heart-to-heart dialogue and say, I'm the superior of this community, I am not the formator. In honesty to say that. And the other sister says, I'm the oldest person here, I have the most experience, for which I'm grateful, but I am not the formator. We need people to be able to have that kind of honest dialogue, but the formator also have the humility and say, I will ask the advice of different people who have gone before me. I can ask their opinion to help me. How would you deal with this kind of issue, this kind of problem? So people who are ex-authority in community, let's use that term, awkward term indeed, who live in communities, and people respect them, and they have made big contributions in their communities. Let's give them a place, but an agreed place. But they, I would suggest, stand back. You are no longer the formator officially. I hope that makes sense. I think it calls for dialogue, good understanding, and stated with respect. It's not exclusion, it's saying who's responsible for what, actually, in this case. I try to do something with that in where I live, and it has some success, not a lot yet, but I think it's a work in progress. This one, actually, it's a work in progress. And that's what I would say. How to make Jesus attractive? How to make Jesus attractive? I think you need to ask Jesus this one. But at the human level, there's two things I would suggest immediately. Get rid of your moods and get rid of your excuses. Two things, get rid of them, let it go. Say goodbye moods, every day, goodbye. And excuses, we have to try it. It's our excuses that hold us back. We are full of generosity, we're full of good spirit, but we have many excuses in our attempts at living. So that's how I would introduce Jesus. And let Jesus introduce himself, of course, above all, which we can enable people to find Jesus, I believe. Thank you.
Puisque les réponses ont été assez brèves, on pourrait faire remonter, je demande à la